So we are live. Hi,
Hey!
everyone. Thanks very much for coming along. Um, we are just about to start the presentation, and we kind of see some people are just logging in. So that's okay. We're up to 82 people, 90.
Wow.
I know, it's incredible. So thanks a lot for taking time out of this sunny day to chat to us. So,
Oh my God,
what?
it's going up and away in knots. It's now 172.
170. Oh my God, that's incredible. So, my name is Trevor Boland. I'm the digital and e-learning officer here in Ahead, and I've just started just a few months ago. My contact details are on the slide, and I'd like to introduce my co-facilitator today, Lorraine Gallagher, and she'll tell you all about
Hello.
herself.
Hello. So I'm the information and training officer with a head, and here a lot longer than Trevor, but sure, that's great.
Well,
And we're broadcasting from. So I'm in sunny Kildare, and Trevor's in sunny Dublin.
yeah, sunny down a base. I know it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Although it is, even though it's sunny out there, I'm kind of glad I'm indoors just for a little while, getting a break from the sun. So, like, this is kind of proven to be like kind of a nice, useful distraction from like having a lobster red color tomorrow.
Well, I'm the same as you. I'm very fair skinned as well. So yes, a little bit
so,
of break from the sun.
so,
And Anne Marie Lyons here from Ballyfermot College of Further Education. Hello.
great.
I
Well,
see you
thanks very
down
much.
there.
So,
Chat.
if this is someone's first time ever in a Zoom webinar, it's very straightforward. There's a few features that are useful to note that should be available to you. There should be a chat box, so feel free just to type a little something in it, introducing yourself, saying hello to the group. Some people like to kind of share information about where they are in the world, about what their job is, and sometimes even people might even share resources in the chat box as well. Some people are very good about sharing, say, websites or articles. So if that's the case, feel free to share that also. And then if you have a question for myself or Lorraine, feel free to use the Q&A chat box specifically for that. Lorraine is going to be like taking over the Q&A box. So she's just going to be looking at that. And there's two types of ways Lorraine can respond to questions. So she can either type an answer in that. So if it's something very straightforward, she can type it. But if it's something a little bit more complex, um, Lorraine will interrupt me and we could just answer that question live. And then there might be a few questions that we might answer at the end. Sometimes that suits as well.
Yeah,
So
and
because,
yeah, and just to add to what Trevor's saying, sometimes people ask things and we're not necessarily able to answer straight away, but we will endeavour to get back to you later on via email, etc.
great,
And because we have people's contact details anyway as part of the sign up process, so we'll be
great.
getting back to people as well.
And just to let people know as well that this is being recorded. Um, as far as I know, you are sharing. So we will share that recording with people in the end. I think we're recording, are we?
We are recording.
We are recording.
We are
So that's great. I know. So we
to a
will,
cloud somewhere. To a
yeah.
cloud somewhere.
So what we'll do is that we'll share that recording afterwards. So it just takes a few days just to tidy up the closed captions. And then as soon as we're ready, we'll place that in the Ahead website and we'll email a link to that information
And I
with it.
see our leader, our former leader, Anne Healan, is also signed in.
No
So
way.
hello,
Hi, Anne. Come. Well, that's
Anne.
fantastic. So,
It's
so
fantastic to see Anne. Yes.
that's fantastic. So, so there's 230 people who have just logged in. So it's great. So I think we might just make a bit of a start
Yeah, we'll
at
kick off.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Perfect. Perfect.
So just further explain what today's about, we're talking about PowerPoint. It's a standardized piece of software that's used throughout education and workplaces. So this information about how to make your PowerPoints accessible is really for everyone. So it's whether you're in education or you're in a workplace, if you're a student, if you're a teacher or an educator or a manager, all this is applicable to you because like we're living in a diverse world. We have diverse people kind of working with us, studying with us, working alongside us. So making presentations as accessible as possible means that it makes it as widely accessible to the widest amount of people possible. So it just makes everyone included in getting as much information as possible from PowerPoint. Okay. So as I had said, we're located in Dublin. So yay. So if we have international people here, we're broadcasting from Ireland. I think there's a few internationals.
Oh, somebody from India. Hello from
Wow.
hello,
Hello
and
from
somebody
India.
from Canada, Leanne from Canada. So it's fantastic.
Great. Wow. Well, thanks very much for visiting Ireland at this time, virtually. So what I want to share is this quotation, first of all. I love my powerful quotes. And this one is from a fantastic person called Mark Weisner, who wrote an amazing article that was way ahead of its time called The Computer for the 21st Century. And it was way back in 1991. And the quote is, "The most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it." And yeah, I know,
You know what? I just thought of
1991.
something. I
Oh,
just thought
yeah,
of something that,
yeah.
one of the things that we absolutely take for granted that was a piece of technology is, of course, the remote control.
Oh, that is true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I know. I would like
Yeah.
to thank my waistline for whoever created that. But,
No, that was actually invented for somebody who was quadriplegic
oh, okay.
many, many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, it's the same with LiveScribe pens as well. Wasn't that created for the corporate sector to
Yes,
cut down
it
and
was.
yeah, and made its way into
Yeah.
disability services too? I know it's amazing. And actually, what I like about this is that I still think we are having this conversation, even though this guy Mark Weisner started it in 1991. Like even I think one of the webinars last Friday in our conference 2020 was that very nice lady from an ETB who spoke about how Office 365 was embedded into their ETB and how it made teaching a functional process during this whole COVID
Yeah.
process. So we are still talking about that embedding of technology in a way where everyone with a wide range of abilities or ability challenges can interact successfully and meaningfully.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we doing? So this slide is just about one of the contexts about why we're doing this. So even though for the next few months, it looks like the COVID experience will be hitting us. And that means from an education point of view, the education sector is looking at teaching online and, so making information as accessible as possible is going to be good for students, just to make sure that they can connect with the education material that you're learning. And as PowerPoint is one of those pieces of software that's just like ubiquitous across the education sector, we want to help you to make PowerPoint as successful as possible. And then this directive, we came about, it's just about really pushing that need for accessibility, and it's requiring public bodies to ensure their websites and apps are accessible to persons with disabilities. So if you're making presentations and they're going even on like a website as well, by the end of this, we'll have given you like lots of tools and tips just to help you making PowerPoints accessible. And then in terms of existing websites, we'll have to comply by 23rd of September. Okay, so I know it's past 23rd of September, but there's still time just to kind of gather all these skills and equip yourself with all this new information about accessibility before September when you're going to be teaching. So I think that's going to be useful. So in terms of just a glossary, I'm just trying to keep it simple by mentioning one term that I mentioned in our last presentation with Lorraine, and that was about how we made accessible Word documents. So screen readers was a term that I would have used. So in case people aren't sure about what I mean by screen readers, it's a form of assistive technology software that enables individuals to access information online. So some of those screen readers are used by people who have visual impairments of varying degrees. And also screen readers also read aloud text on websites as well. So for example, if someone has dyslexia, they might use a piece of software that reads the text off the screen. So when we talk about accessibility and PowerPoints, we also talk about making PowerPoints that can successfully interact with these screen reader technologies. Okay, so I might just have to exit the presentation mode because I kind of need during at times to kind of show you the slide in this kind of format. So because I need to access something in a few tools in the ribbon overhead, which you can see. So first of all, the main thing about accessibility is like there is a tool within PowerPoint that checks the accessibility of your PowerPoint. So, and this is called the accessibility checker. So to find this, you go to review, and then over here, there's something called check accessibility. So when I click on that, I think, actually, Lorraine, is that visible? The accessibility checker, and it's highlighting a few issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So that means there is information popping up about how there's something called missing alternative text in a picture here. If I click on the picture, it'll show, but right now I'm just showing you the types of information that comes up in an accessibility checker. So at the end, we'll revisit the accessibility checker and see if all these issues have been resolved. There might be one or two that aren't, and I will explain why. So it's also saying something about missing a slide title. So, okay, we'll see why that's important. Duplicate slide title, unusual. And then suggested alternative text for a picture. Okay, so already there's a few things coming up that I may or may not already be able to address. But right now, let's assume that I don't know how to address any of these. Okay. So I'm just going to move to the next slide. So I partook in a really nice webinar by CAST. So CAST, if you don't know, talk about universal design and are very sympathetic to the mission of AHEAD as well. And what I liked about CAST is they use this acronym called SLIDE to introduce that notion of accessibility into PowerPoint. So the S stands for styles, and that's just covering the titles and what's involved in giving a good title on a slide. The L is for links, so adding hyperlinks and the information needed to be successful about making a hyperlink interactive with your end user. And then regarding I for images, the use of alternative text or alt text about giving your image information. So people who you do use these screen reader technologies understand what's in the image. And what's in the image is really dependent on what we, as the creators of PowerPoint, manually type in to that alternative text box that we're going to see a little bit later. And then D is for design. So, because I have a visual art background, and actually, so does Lorraine. I suppose this is the bit where our biases come in. So we would happily chalk for 3 hours on design in PowerPoint, but we're not. We're going to restrain ourselves. And we're going to mention a few things about color, composition, font, and alignment of font as well, and how all these kind of contribute to making a slide easier to read. And then the last one, which is E for evaluate, is about using the accessibility checker, which I've mentioned already. And then if you're a school or a workplace or college or wherever you come from, or for personal use, you may use the Google Suite. So the equivalent accessibility checker for Google Suite tools is called Grackle. And that can be added to your browser, your Chrome browser. So if you go to your Chrome web store, that is available to you. So we have a link to Grackle. So just to let you know that after the presentation, we will be making not only the video available to you, but the PowerPoint as well.
Trevor, can I just stop you there for 1 second? I presume there was one person has got back to me and said they cannot see the slides. I presume everyone else can see them.
Okay.
I can see them. Yeah.
If people can just type in the chat box. That's.
Oh yeah, someone else is. Yeah, people can see them. Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
okay. So I wonder if you can't see them, is that maybe an issue with your broadband possibly? Would your broadband, so if your broadband is an issue, could you turn your phone into a hotspot? That may have a stronger signal.
Don't know.
But anyway, if you can't see it, whoever that person is, if you can't see it, that's okay. That we will be giving this video and the slides available afterwards. So don't worry.
They'll be available afterwards.
Yeah. So we'll all be available. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. So just looking at the S. S for styles, which is great, is in terms of headings on a slide, headings are an absolute must because for people who use screen readers, they need a heading in order for their technology to tell them what the context and nature of the slide is. As well as that, for people like myself, I need a heading because I want to kind of see an overview of what the slide is going to tell me. So if this is an educator, I expect them to have a title on the slide. Or if this was like a work presentation, I would still look for a title to kind of see what the context of the information is going to be and get into that right frame of mind for it. So in terms of font sizes for headings, there's a little bit, I'm not going to say disparity, but there's a little bit of interpretation about what is seen as an appropriate font size, because I'm sure someone's going to ask this. So I went digging around, and a font size for a heading of 36 to 44 is seen as appropriate. And then for the regular style font, so I've done mine a little bit bigger, just for the purpose of this presentation. So I'll show you how large mine is. So for my headings, I put a 60. So I went like way over the top. So I wanted to make sure that there's no readability issues for anyone here. And then for the regular style, so for the body, I made my size 37. But this, I use a number of sites. One recommended for the body of text between 24 to 28 points. So I went 37, so I'm really safe for this. But there's always going to be someone who asks for a minimum size. And there's a really good website called Ally, kind of 11Y, and they have lots of information about accessibility as well. So if you need a minimum font size, 24 is one that Ally recommend. So you might be interested in just a minimum size because you might have a text that has quite a bit of text in it, or a slide that has quite a bit of text in it. So in terms of other information about headings, unique and meaningful slide titles is important. So keep them, so try not to repeat the names of slide titles as well. If you do use a name repeatedly, so call it S for Styles 1, S for Styles 2, S for Styles 3. So like, let's say I had 3 slides about S for Styles. So just to distinguish them from each other, that's a good idea. And in terms of presentation style, keep it paced, keep it even. And in terms of how you present to a physical audience, also facing the audience is a really good idea, because in terms of ISL, like Irish Sign Language interpreters, it's really good if they can not only see what you're saying, but also see your lips as well, because some people are really good at lip reading. So also that's considered best practice as well. And I'm not sure, Lorraine, you probably have some
Yeah, I
tips
mean,
around
even in
that.
terms of like, say, like presenting online, that you're facing the camera properly and that you're lit properly, so somebody can lip
Oh
read
yeah.
online or follow online. And we were going to talk a bit later, and that was making sure that when you are doing an online presentation, that you have the closed captions,
Oh yeah.
so that somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing can follow the presentation, because they may not have, otherwise they may not be able to follow it properly. So,
And I
but
think,
we're
and
going to touch on that. Yeah.
touching that, yeah, and Lorraine actually reminded me of this just for the presentation. So I've chucked in a slide based on Lorraine's recommendation about that. So, so our next slide has no title. So I thought this was an interesting one because I actually went exploring as much as I could about finding as many ways as possible to insert a title correctly. So I want to share that weird knowledge that I've managed to gain over it. So inserting a heading. So you'd imagine you go to insert, and you'd imagine you go to text box possibly, and you would imagine you can just insert a text box and then say, this is a heading. Okay. So we can see if this is a heading. There's a useful kind of tool in view. So let's go to view, and we're in slide 10. Yeah, so I can see I'm in slide 10. So I'm going to go to outline view, and when I go to outline view for slide 10, I don't see a heading. So can you see that there?
Yeah, yeah, we can see that
Okay.
there.
So even though I've inserted a text box, it says this is a heading. It's not a heading. Okay. So let me see. There in home, I think. Oh yeah, I can click on this. Actually, let me click on the text box. I went digging around, and actually, this was so. So now I've created text. I'm using the font that I use for headings, even though it's not the right size. Let's see now. By clicking on view, by clicking on outline view, it's still not right. So it's still not coming up as a heading because we can see in all the other slides, because it's kind of in bold text, that you would imagine this should be a heading, but it's not. So it seems like one of the ways to insert a heading is to click on your home tab,
Yeah.
click on layout. And now I've created a large number of layouts for myself. So I'll show you that a little bit later. But there's one that I've named just heading, and that's got just a heading on the top. It's very hard to see. And when I click on that, now, okay, it's so annoying, that design box. Now I get the proper heading text box. So now I can say, this is a proper heading, hopefully. Sorry, I'll just straighten that because I'm a bit pedantic. Okay, so how do we check now if this is a proper heading? We go to zoom or view, we go to outline. Slide 10 now has a proper heading. So I can see it here. And
Yeah.
this is a proper heading, is in bold text.
Very good.
Yeah. I mean, is that something, that's something actually I had been doing wrong for years and years and years. And I'll admit my shame and embarrassment to that.
Okay.
But like, it is something that I think, even that, I think is something that's quite, it's not very intuitive in
No, it's
PowerPoint.
not very intuitive. It's not very easy to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when you think of words, there was that selection of heading styles, and you click heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and that same feature in Word, that's fantastic, isn't evident in PowerPoint. And I don't know why it's not, because I thought it would be a really good, facility here. It just seems like that logic would transfer really well. Okay, so we've added the slide. So I've mentioned it's not like Word. Nope, there's a little trick or two. And we've gone through the wrong ways. And then we went through the home tab and then layout and then insert the heading slide. So that's one of the ways. So there's only one other way, and that's through the master slide, but I'll get to that in the end. In the end. So we're at L for links. So if you saw our accessible Word webinar a few weeks ago, we would have just done a little section on making links. So again, this is just following that same logic that we used that. So links should be descriptive and avoid generic link text. Example, click here or about. So like if I made a link saying click here for ahead, or information about ahead, or learn more about ahead, that's not seen as that doesn't have enough context in it. So the full web address should be hidden behind the descriptive link text. So there's a few different names for this, like this link. So I think someone called it like a naked link or naked URL. When it's
Right.
just copied and pasted from the browser and inside. So avoid click here and naked URLs as difficult for a screen reader to read. So
Actually, Trevor, can I just, before you go on to the next thing, when you finish that slide, can I just bring up a few things?
yeah.
There's a few questions, okay, in the Q&A box.
Q&A box.
And so do screen readers have the ability to read headings from the format? Just asking, as text-to-speech software usually reads straight from the heading into text with no pause unless you put a full stop at the end of the heading.
Oh, really? Does it?
Hmm.
Are they asking that question, sorry, or telling us?
And they're probably asking. So,
Okay.
no, it may not say heading. It's a way of signposting, isn't it?
Yeah, because I suppose what I really liked about the Word webinar that we had, like if you use the proper headings on all the paragraph structure Word document, you could create that little bit at the beginning of your document that captured all the headings and put them in as a block at the start. So screen readers are going to read the headings really easily.
And then they
So
go down. So that's the way they. Yes, yes, I heard
yeah,
that.
so I suppose it's just a different logic. Yeah, I suppose it's like looking at a bunch of folders on your desktop, and you might have different names for the folders. So you're going to look at all the folders' names before you decide to dig into the actual folders. So it's like a top level way of accessing information, and then you can zoom in on the, the heading.
And then the next, well, the full stop at the end of the headings is a bit like the bullet points. A screen reader doesn't read bullet points, so you should always put on your PowerPoint put full stops
Oh,
after each point.
okay.
Yeah, that's yeah. And then I was thinking, like, there's about can you create a template slide with format headings? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
If you create your slides, if you go into the formatting and you pick your slides, when you pick from the templates, it automatically has the headings in them. You simply write in them. It's when you don't use the templates you have these difficulties.
And as I'm discovering, some of the templates are made really poorly.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? The
So
colors
then,
are, yeah.
yeah, so then you might have to manually go in and into your master slide, which I'll show at the end, and even add headings into some of the slides that don't have headings. But we'll show
Yeah.
you that because that's kind of a strange one.
And then
So
somebody,
yeah,
can I just add one? Sorry, Trevor, just to cut
yeah,
across you
that's all right.
once more, because we did mention sign language, but well, we mentioned people who are deaf and hard of hearing, right? So somebody's wondering if our sign language is quite similar to British Sign Language or mutually comprehensive. The answer to that is no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have experience of requiring different ISL and BSL in terms for the same event? I have come across that actually, where you've had
Oh,
people who speak two different types of ISL, but uh, there is another thing called international sign language, right? Which deaf people also use, which is a kind of a mishmash. And because sign is kind of like there was kind of similar signs. So you could be abroad and meet somebody else who's deaf, who technically speaks a different language to you, but you can actually communicate. Lots of people do know international sign language, but BSL and ISL are different. They're not the same. Yeah.
okay, okay.
So just hopefully I've answered that.
And actually, that's a good point about the full stops after the bullet points for screen
Yeah.
readers. I didn't know
For
that.
screen readers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
am
interesting.
just actually PowerPoint. There's a lot to this whole PowerPoint thing. I'm glad I'm doing this webinar. I'm glad I'm attending here so I can learn more. Yeah, because it is turning
Uh,
into a bit of a minefield. It's not as intuitive as I would have hoped. So okay, so just getting into that link then. So how to make a link. So whether you're creating specifically about a hyperlink or embedding hyperlink within a text, it's relatively straightforward. So you may have done this a few times before, or many times, and most people may have. So what I'm going to do is that I've got the link here for the Conference 22 webpage that has loads of our videos now from our 10 weeks of webinars. So I will say to access our videos from our AHEAD conference 2020, and then I will just copy this and then I'll select the text and then I have the instructions written as well. Right click, click link, go to the address box, Control V, OK, and now that untidy link is now in a sentence that gives a bit of context about this web page as well. So like I'm directing someone here so they can go and see the videos with all the Conference 2020 videos. So that's it. So someone, even before they click on the link, can see why I want people to view this web page. So I suppose in a way, it's contextually based. So there's a number of reasons why it could direct someone to the Head 2020 conference page as well. Because if the nature of the slide was making people aware of the variety of speakers we had at the conference, then this sentence would look a little bit different. I would say something like, to see the wide range of speakers from around the world, go to this conference 2020 webpage and then embed it. So I think that context part is quite important, because I have gone to presentations before where they type the naked URL and they don't explain why they want you to go, or in some slides I've seen like a list of naked URLs and they don't specify, and then immediately when I do get access to the slides afterwards, I don't click on the links because it's like, how much of my time do I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
involve
yeah.
exploring those links? Okay, so I'll go to the next one. So I for images. So there's 3 types of images. So again, if you had seen the making an accessible Word document, this information is all transferable from Word now to slides. So there's 3 different images. So one is an informative image, which should include a concise description based on the purpose and context for us. Okay, consider the purpose and context for use, then start with the general idea, and then focusing on the relevant details and important relationships. So so informative images could be anything. So if you're a lecturer in chemistry, your images could potentially be very wide ranging, from anything to do with equipment to cell structure. And then if you're an engineer, it could be anything from photographs of bridges or bridge types. So that contextual piece again is necessary for descriptions of images again, because you need to kind of tell the person like what it is about this particular image you want to draw their attention to. And we're on the next slide, we're actually going to like do an alt text activity. So again, I'll just show one by one how to do each. So our second one is a functional image, and that all you just do is add a link to that image. So you're showing them maybe even a web page link. You could have done a screenshot of a web page and then just add the link into the image. So it could be something as simple as that. So need to describe the destination or action that will take place. Okay. And then third, the final type of image that you can come across is something that's just purely decorative. And there's a very easy way in PowerPoint and Word to mark something as decorative. Okay. And then if you're interested in other ways about looking at alt text in a kind of a discipline-specific way, these 2 websites are really good. This one in particular, the Diagram Center one, goes into much more information about conventions about writing alt text for things like bar charts, diagrams, maps, and science type of images as well. So again, we might have a big variety of people here from various disciplines. So there might be a discipline-specific way of creating an alt tag image. Are you okay, Lorraine?
My dog is barking. I might just
Okay.
mute for a moment.
No, you're actually okay. I hardly hear the dog. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's good. I
Okay.
think those headphones are brilliant. So now we're looking at these 3 image types. Okay, so our informative image. So we're looking at this image that we've made for an AHEAD event, and there's an AHEAD event coming up soon called Student Mental Wellbeing and Resilience Webinar. Fantastic. Highly recommend you go to the ahead.ie webpage to look at it. So what I'm going to do, is I'm going to put my cursor over the image. I'm going to right click on my mouse. I am then going to find this little feature then called Edit Alt Text. So when I click on that, that opens this window on the side. So alternative text or alt text is the alternative text I'm going to embed in this image so people with screen readers can actually understand what's involved in this image. So this is a webinar hosted by AHEAD about student mental well-being and resilience. Okay. Ta-da! So that's our first one done. So there's no save button. So you just simply X out of it, and you can just click Save here. Okay, on the top of your PowerPoint document. Okay, so the second one is functional. So that's where we just literally embed a link into the image. So I have the link here. So hopefully the link will behave itself and allow me to select the information. So I'm selecting the link. I go to copy, click on the image, right click, right click on the image, edit alt text. The alt text alternative text box appears. And then I can just, that's it. So that's our web link. So that has that in it. And then this one is just purely decorative. So again, what I'm going to do is go to alt text, and you'll see there's a little text box here called mark as decorative. And when I click on that, it grays out the alt text box. So that means there's no alt text needed. So it's just telling that screen reader that this is just purely just to make the page look pretty. Okay, so that's, yeah.
Just another question that's come up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Somebody's wondering, Fiona is wondering if too much animation in PowerPoint causes accessibility issues.
Yeah, well, I would argue, I wouldn't argue in terms of accessibility. I would argue about too much animation distracting. Like, for example, if I was a student or staff member with ADHD, which I know I have a little bit of ADHD, I love being constantly distracted. So if there is a presentation with very animate animation or an animated GIF, I will completely forget what the point of the slide is, and I will stare at a moving image. That's why I love TV and movies. Give me a moving image, and it just puts my mind at rest. And I just completely phase out of what's important in life then. So I would so I'm not going to say there's no right or rule. I suppose it depends on the style of the image or the GIF. If it's a very slow moving image and there's a point to it, let's say you've inserted an image of a heart beating very slowly, because maybe you're a doctor and you're teaching and you want your med students to understand the movement of a heartbeat. I mean, I would get why it's important to see that, but I would just restrain myself in terms of then how that information is displayed. Like if it's an image that's going to be moving, I would want to make the page as low distracting as possible. So I wouldn't want loads and loads of text beside that image. Like, I think you have to balance yourself in terms of like the potential end user. Like if that potential end user has ADHD, he or she, maybe like me, are going to be completely distracted by an image like that.
Yeah, I suppose just to add about the fact that you not necessarily using animation, but actually mixing up presentation.
Yeah.
So particularly say at the moment where we're all kind of like looking at screens and getting tired, I think it is good to break things up so that you do have some images and some maybe film in it.
Yeah.
Not like say YouTube clips, whatever. Simply because in order to keep people engaged. So it's that
Yeah.
balance between obviously you want things to be accessible, but you also want the balance
Yeah.
for your audience to stay engaged, and it's getting that balance right. I know it's a slightly different thing to what we're talking about today, but it
Yeah.
is something to think about as well. Not to be saying, well, I wouldn't put in animation simply because, well, it might be too distracting. If you had like every single slide, it would be definitely distracting. But
Yeah.
maybe if you had it, well, like, what's the point of putting the animation in? You have to think about like, why are you doing the presentation, and what's the point of the animation? Does it
Yeah.
add to the presentation, or is it simply there just to make it a bit more bells and whistles? You know.
And I have to say, I totally agree with you, Lorraine. Like, I had a really nice lecture before, and she would teach us about like special ed and the particular pedagogies behind it. And she loved inserting images that were just completely off the wall. And I have to say, I would like, even though I really liked her and the content was great, all I could start thinking about is why was the image there about this off the wall thing? and it just ended up being really distracting. So I don't know if that was my ADHD or not. So that's where I would kind of reinforce what Lorraine has said. Like, the images have to be purposeful, and they have to link and be sympathetic to the content. So mixing up images and the text, I think, is great, and definitely in terms of UDL, fits in well. But like that, there has to be something meaningful about why those images are there, else they, that purpose of the image just gets lost then.
Yeah.
Okay, so will we go to D for design? We're okay for
Steve, can
questions, are we?
I just ask you
Yeah,
one more question, right?
yeah.
Somebody's asked, what's the point of adding a link to the alt text? Wouldn't the screen reader end up reading the entire URL? Well, it might be useful.
Yeah, it might be useful.
Yeah, it
Well, I
might be useful.
suppose it might be useful. Yeah, like, I suppose I'm thinking. Like, for example, I actually have a functional link in our head logo here. So you see the head logo in our PowerPoint. So that means anyone who gets access to this PowerPoint, instead of having to find a head.ie or click on it, the screen reader will actually find us here within the logo, and they can just go straight to us.
Which is
So,
really handy.
which is handy, yeah. So I suppose when I was even creating this, I was trying to think, how can I make this slide as accessible as possible for people just to get to information quickly. Okay. No, but it is a good point. Something I have thought of before. I mean, if you find a piece of information, please share it with us about that. Because like
Yeah.
that, because some of the information I find in accessibility, some of it is hard black and white facts, and others it's kind of like there's a gray area, especially when it comes to alternative text. Like, it's basically, they just kind of say context. Context drives, the information behind the alt text.
Otherwise,
So
it is blank for somebody who can't see what's on. And I think people forget, if you're blind, you cannot see what's on the screen. So if you
yeah,
have a blank link that just says click here, like, for what? Why am I
yeah,
clicking here?
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay. No, but I think it's a fair point. That person's making a fair point. Yeah.
yeah,
I actually don't know the
yeah.
answer to it, but I will.
Um,
Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
maybe
Go
this
for
maybe this is the end. But anyway, this is more to do with design, actually, right?
it. Okay.
So if you can convert your slides into a PDF handout, presumably you lose all the alt text from the images. Well, actually, no. Once it's embedded in it, it should stay in the PDF.
Yeah. Yeah. There is.
Yeah.
I actually left that particular bit out about how to save a PowerPoint specifically, because as you're saving it to PDF, there's a number of things you have to tick just to make sure you keep that information intact within the PDF. Because actually, one of my I have a question at the end. It's a poll, and I've asked a few specific questions about further accessibility webinars people would like to see. And I suppose in my mind, I had something separate in mind about how to save Word documents as PDFs properly and PowerPoints as PDFs
Yeah,
properly.
maybe that's for another day then.
Yeah, so I had that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a good question. It is a good question. And it's not just you save straight to PDF. There is a little thing to do with a few tick boxes. Yeah. I know, that's the thing. As soon as you start the accessibility chat, questions come
Then
everywhere
they just come
because
up. They come up
it is
everywhere.
so
Yeah, yeah.
big. It is so big. Even when you think of something simple as, like, you kind of think you just save PowerPoint as PDF and it should all work then for everyone, and it's not
And it doesn't.
always that simple.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's not all that simple. Yeah.
I know, I know. No, but it is a good question. Well, actually, my tip would be, like, is it possible just to give the students or staff simply the PowerPoint and let them choose how they want to save it? I mean, and that was a point I think was Damien Gordon made in TU Dublin a few years ago to me. And when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, because the PowerPoint, you can do whatever you want to it. You can change it, modify the text, whatever you want, stick in your own kind of extra notes, and then you can turn it into a PowerPoint, and you can save it in whatever way suits you best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why, and even oh, there was that nice guy from Microsoft. He came in one day, Stephen.
I know the guy you mean. I just can't think of his
Yeah,
name. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
he
yeah.
actually
Nice guy.
recommended to the library that it's a good idea, if you have any Word documents, not to save them as PowerPoint, leave them as Word documents, so the person who receives the Word document can decide how to save it as a PDF in a way that
Stephen Howell. Stephen
Howell,
Howell is his
that's
name.
it.
Very good. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
plug
you. Yeah.
plug for Microsoft. We are. I know. We should be. Yeah. Anyway, no. Um. Okay. So it depends. So I kind of like that particular vantage point of just give them the PowerPoint and the Word document, and that person saves the information in whatever way they want, and they can even like enlarge text, make it smaller, take information out, put extra information in. I think it's just way more flexible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So D for design. So design, I specifically started with color contrast. There's a few different tools online, and I have a link to this one. Just because of time, I'm probably not going to go into it, but there are a number of, I suppose, general pieces of advice about the color background. So I'm using blue, a light blue, kind of a powdery blue for this one, because I actually have a scotopic sensitivity. And a very wonderful work colleague of mine called Gerda McGorkle tested me for scotopic sensitivity, and we found out that blue works best for me. So I actually use not only blue for the backgrounds of my slides, but for blue for Word documents as I'm typing them. I also have a blue screen reader that I have on my Chrome browser that I downloaded from Chrome Store, which is an app store for your Chrome browser, and I just downloaded from that. So for me, blue helps me read text more effectively, and because it counteracts kind of a shadowy effect that I see with black text on a white background. So I can, like, this is my ideal color. So for other people, it might be completely distracting. If it is, please tell us. And then there's a number of other colors as well that generally are useful for people as well. So I think beige, a light beigey color, you sometimes see that as a recommendation for readability. So if that's the case, beige is good. But if you're interested in this, there's a website called Irlen, IRLEN, and they actually talk specifically about different colors to use, and they can range from yellow to purples to greens. So when I was screened for scotopic sensitivity, I was screened using an Irlen test. So, and that it gives you kind of information about not only using color that's still bright and but it also allows for readability within the use of diverse range of colors. So I think that's a useful site. I should have actually added that here. So if you just even Google Irlen and then color and then reading.
So IRLEN.
Yeah,
Ireland. Yeah.
Irlen. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
quite good. So in terms of color is great. Obviously, try not to use certain kind of colors, so contrasty colors like green text against a red background. We may have an example of that. And then also low distraction background. So I see in some fantastic templates, there's like these really busy backgrounds that are designed really well and completely distracting. And for people, I imagine, with ADHD, a nightmare. So that's why I suppose I would look at color and backgrounds in kind of a new lens, so to speak, when it comes down to low distraction slides that just impart information successfully. Using sans serif fonts. So when we say sans serif fonts, this is an example of a sans serif font. It's called TWSenMT. So I think it's short for 20th century. I don't know what the MT is short for, but there's loads of different sans serifs. Helvetica, Roboto. There's loads of fonts out there that are mainstream. Do you have a favorite font
Veranda.
yourself?
Loads. I
Yeah,
like
there
Veranda.
is.
Yeah, Veranda's good on slides, actually.
Yeah. So those types of fonts are kind of like low distracting. They're quite geometric in their shape, so they wouldn't have very decorative, flouncy kind of ends and stems to them. So they create a better reading experience. Actually, and this slide, which or this point about the maximum 6 to 8 lines of text per slide. Again, that was a recommendation from Ally, that website. I just thought that was a really good tip. So I suppose if you are partial to having lots of text on a slide, I think this is a good guideline about how you could break up a large piece of text throughout 2 or 3 slides. So depending on that. So not to put pressure on yourself to have as much information as possible into one slide, just to break it up. into
And can I
different
just
slides.
actually
Yeah,
add to what you're saying as well? Really, the slide is a guide, right?
yeah,
The slide's a guide for you as a presenter. It's not a novel, right? So really, why do people go to the lecture? Because it's not necessarily the slide, it's what you talk about in terms of the slide, right? The
yeah, yeah,
slide is really a guide. So you shouldn't really have a novel on your slide, you know? It's a guide for people to, this is what we're doing. You talk around what you have on your slide, and then people have to go and do more research. So often on slides, less is actually more, and
yeah.
we'll kind of look at that. We'll kind of explore that, I know, further down as well.
Yeah, yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
great. And then avoiding italics. So italics, which is that kind of zigzaggy kind of look, can be distracting. Also, it changes the shape of letters as well. So it can take a little, people say maybe even with a processing issue, just to try and figure out what the letters are. And it just makes just, again, another obstacle for someone to read in a very fluid way. Underline for emphasis. So avoiding italics, but yeah, actually, I would, even though I have that here, I would actually argue maybe not underlining, because I think when you underline, it actually looks like a link. Um,
I think, yeah, avoiding on italics and underline and
yeah,
bold for emphasis, because people will think, and yeah, use
yeah.
bold if you must. Yeah, yeah.
So use bold if you must. Okay, okay. Use bold if
Because
you
if,
must.
yeah, because if you underline, it looks like a link. You're right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a number of different trade styles. I suppose people are kind of trying to find out alternatives to italics. So like that, avoid abbreviations. And that can be really hard, especially when you're in a discipline where there are lots of different, bespoke acronyms and that. So that's why even at the start, like I had a glossary just about a specific term, like screen readers, just to make sure that everyone is in the know about what screen readers are. But like that, I think glossaries are really important. So if you're going to impart new knowledge to students, maybe a glossary at the beginning and just going over those new terms is a good idea. Or there's a lecturer who I know who actually gives the glossary to the students before they come into the classroom. And part of that is called, there's a cognitive load theory involved in that. So they learn the new terms before they come into the classroom. So then when they come in, then it's assumed that they would have read and understand those terms. So the lecturer can go straight into the meaty kind of notions then behind these kind of new phrases and terms. I thought that was kind of clever as well.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose the only thing with that is I know from working with groups over the years, you might see it, you might see your group once in the week or twice in the week, and you tell them to bring the stuff, and do they bring it? It's a difficult one, you
Yeah,
know.
it is tough.
It's a
Yeah,
difficult
yeah,
one.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's avoiding transitions. Oh, it's a shame because there's PowerPoint has so many wonderful transitions, but try to resist. As I found myself, transitions can be really distracting. So use simple transitions, me and simple animations as well, if you have to. Again, PowerPoint has so much possibilities that I suppose really, if you're tailoring for an education or a work audience, really you want to make it as low distraction as possible. Regarding tables, charts, graphs, please put them on their own slide. And again, that's another recommendation from Ally. I think that's so important, just one chart per slide, because information, even in a chart, can be quite complex to someone. Also, if someone is just looking at information on a graph and it's a relatively simple graph, I just really would kind of like, having viewed a lot of PowerPoints in my lifetime, I just think that's kind of a really good tip as well. In terms of composition, I've seen some PowerPoints in my day kind of having font kind of in zigzags up and down, and then along the side, words down along. So sometimes people kind of lay out information in kind of very strange ways or unusual compositions. Like, just for the sake of your audience, like whether they're students or staff, I would try to keep PowerPoints in a particular style throughout. So that means the distraction is lower and the emphasis on the information you're trying to impart is higher. Avoid all caps. I think we all know that because it kind of looks like yelling. Also, it can be challenging to read too because all capital letters means that something called sight vocabulary, like how we would have learned words as children, um, means that we recognize words by their shapes. So when you put everything in all caps, all the words lose that shape because they're all in kind of like high letters. So it can actually, cause a little delay in terms of reading if someone has an issue with that. And then left alignment and content, avoid justification. So even how I've laid out this slide, everything is aligned to the left-hand side because as people in Western culture, we read from left to right. Now, it would be different if you're in a different culture, but for ours, this is how we read. So that kind of just has
And of
culturally has
course,
fed into it. Yep.
yeah, and the left alignment also, if you have the what you call it when it's in the center, when it creates rivers of
Oh,
text
yeah.
as well. It's just avoid that center justification.
It's
So
true.
that it's left alignment is the
So I've got
easiest way.
two slides that show that. Okay, so just for example, so I'm going to try not to display these slides for too long because I think there's one or two that are kind of just jarring. So this is the first slide that we tried. Um,
Wonderful,
it's wonderful. So from a
wonderful.
color theory point of view, it's really interesting. From a readability issue, it's terrible. So like because even just exploring some slide templates, sometimes you kind of question who designed it and why it was designed for. So even in terms of the font, I just went messing around by putting the first paragraph in even all caps, as well as putting that centered justification. It means that where you move from one sentence to another when you're reading it isn't as easy as you would imagine. And then even I put a serif font then at the bottom. And again, it's amazing like how much I struggle reading that as fast as my favorite font, which is the 20th century font, which I'm using throughout the slides. So of course, Lorraine kind of said, put in a slide with a pattern
Yeah,
background. Yeah, brace yourself. So I
there
went
you
with
go.
this. Wowzers. Yeah, but even though I know we're showing a few bad examples, but like there's a website and I've given the link to it at the end. It's called Slide Carnival and it has some brilliant templates. They're not accessible,
The green
but
is awful.
yeah, no, the greens are terrible.
Oh,
So even though uh, Slide Carnival is a great website for different styles of presentations. They're not accessible, but I have actually got a few ideas about different layouts and from images as well that they use as well. But they do require a little bit of work to make them accessible. And the presentations that they give are in both PowerPoint and Google Slides formats as well. Okay. So, we're back to the blue background. So finally, we're in the E of slides. So E for evaluate. So evaluate using the built-in accessibility checker in Microsoft Office. So we've explored that. So we're just going to click on that again in a moment. And again, just another reminder about Google. And if you're making slides in your Google Drive, Grackle is the extra add-on that can test your Google slide for accessibility. So it's useful and it's good to know it's there. But if you spend the time, and this is just a tip I've discovered, making a beautiful PowerPoint in Google Slides, and you download that as a Microsoft Office Word PowerPoint, there's loads of issues that arise from that as it kind of converts from a Google slide to Microsoft Office. So it's really important to note that you may have to put alt tag on your images. There's kind of a unusual name convention that can happen from that. So I would say, you know who you're going to pitch your presentation for and create it in that piece of software that you're going to end up using at the end. So for example, if you're going to be presenting Google Slides, make it in Google Slides. If you're going to be making it in PowerPoint and then showing it as a PowerPoint, I would recommend that, just so it doesn't lose anything as it converts from one to the other. But anyway, that's just me. Okay. Accessibility checker. Okay, well, let's go to the accessibility checker, because not only does it check for accessibility, but if you don't know how to do something, it does give tips, instructions about how to address some of the issues involved. Also, just a word of warning, using the accessibility checker is fantastic. It gives you really good tips, but it's not completely perfect. It does have limitations. So some things accessibility checker will check for you, but some of the things you'll just have to know how to do yourself. So for example, chunking information down into bullet points. PowerPoint doesn't check for how much text heavy your slides are. So that's something that really you have to kind of take on board yourself. Okay, so let's go back and let's just see. So if we go to review and we want to check the accessibility checker, click accessibility. How are we doing? Okay, so we're getting there. So there's few issues. There's an alternative text issue appearing, but let's see if that's fixed by the time we get down. And we still have a duplicate slide title happening. Okay, so let's just click that off. So we still see there's a bit more. So I think that might be it just for that one. So the next slide was Lorraine's recommendation, and that's about closed captions, or CC, for your online PowerPoint presentation. So if you're in work or college or university or whatever education institution you're with, you may have an Office 365 account. If you do have an Office 365 account, you have the facility to create PowerPoint presentations online, and then you have the extra feature of closed captions within that. So I've given the instructions here, but what I might do, I might unshare my screen and then share a PowerPoint that I have online in my Office 365 account. So I'm going to see if this works. So Lorraine, would you tell me if this works?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not working. It's not even working on mine. Okay, so I'm going to stop share.
Okay.
So I'm going to click on my browser. So you should be able to see this, I think.
Hey, Trevor, can I just stop you there for 1 second?
Yeah.
You know, Ally, is that a website or is that an organization?
I think it's both.
Okay, this
Yeah.
person said they can't. Maybe it's not spelled right. I'll just spell it for them again. Maybe they just didn't.
Okay. No, I can pull up.
So it's A11Y.
Yeah.
A11Y.
So I'll post the link as soon as I'm done this.
We were just having that conversation, weren't we, Trevor? How we love calculating lazy.
I know, completely. Yeah, so I'm showing this presentation because it's for somebody else, but so I have it in, so you can see my browser. So this is my Chrome browser, and you can see that I've opened up my online presentation. So we can, sorry, I just have to move a few windows so I can access a few things. So here I can click on how I want to view the slideshow. So view from beginning. So I'm doing that right now. So right now you should be able to see closed captions appearing at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
As I'm speaking, text is appearing. This is useful for many different types of students. In particular, it's useful for students whose first language may not be English. Okay, so I stopped the share on that. Okay, so what I might do is I might just go back just to show the instructions about that live, because even though I have them written down, oh, wait a second. Stop share. So let me just exit that. It won't exit now. Why is it going in the, okay, so finally it exited. I don't know why. Okay, so what I need to do in order to activate the closed caption facility isn't too difficult at all. So I'm in slideshow. You can already see there's an option here saying always use subtitles. So if it's your first time, there's a few things to set up first. So the spoken language is that I am speaking English, so I need to tell PowerPoint I'm speaking English. And then my subtitle language, I need to tell it I would like that in English. You can also pick a different language, but just for the sake of this, I'm picking English. And then I'm almost finished. Then you can choose where you want the closed captions to appear as well. So depending on, you might have a border free at the top of the bottom or the middle, or however you have your presentation, there might be a way of emphasizing that, of laying out all those closed captions then in a way where it's very viewable to your audience. So that's it. So it's really easy. And then of course, Google Slides has a closed caption feature as well. It's very easy to engage with. I've used it myself. So it's worth exploring as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. So I will go back to
So can we save that as well then? So if someone wants to go back, if this is recorded and someone wants to look at it, will they work that when it's recorded?
How do you mean?
So if you're using the subtitles, right, you've turned them on. I wonder, you know, if you have someone using the class that's deaf.
Yeah. Can you save them?
Yeah.
There is something. Oh God, it was an AT officer who told me. Actually, if we, I can't remember right now, but we might add it to the email that we send out people.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, because that way we can send a link to it, because it's not very straightforward as far as I remember how to use this extra feature. I'm not 100% now if it stores, if the person is asking, does it store the closed captions as kind of a text file?
Yeah, just, you know, if somebody was deaf and they were, you know, this is being sent around, sure, it's no good without them. So
oh, well, actually, you've kind of come across something. Like in the poll that I'm going to do at the end, one of the things that I'm putting down for people to choose is how to turn their PowerPoint into a video. And then like there's an option where you can have a little video of yourself then kind of speaking as you're presenting the slides. So within that, that may have the facility to switch on closed captions, hopefully. Now that I'm thinking out loud, I don't know if it does. And then at least, you know, you can make that available. But what we could do is look at the possibility of, like, if I uploaded that video that I can make a PowerPoint and upload it to YouTube, what's the...
it will do on YouTube. Yeah, you're right. Actually.
Yeah, because then I could upload it to YouTube and see how long it takes for that to be good, for a script of a sort, for those closed captions to be available, and then how I could download those and then give them to that student, because that might be the alternative feature.
Yeah.
But again, that could be an interesting follow-up to this webinar. I think that would complement this really well.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I know once you get started talking about accessibility, it really does kind of grow legs.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, I've mentioned the master slide throughout, and the master slide is basically like the dictator of PowerPoint. It's the process that kind of tells all your other slides how they're going to behave and look in this. So I've got the instructions about how to find and locate the slide master, and just mentioning a few tips about how in the slide master, that's where you can create, like, you know, the font style, dictate the font style, the colors, the whole look of the slide, say even like the footer of the slide here, how that just automatically appears in every single slide. So what I'm going to do is going to go and do that now. So if I click on view, so I'm going to find the master slide. So I go to view, I go to slide master, and within slide master, this is the thing, you need to kind of scroll up. So this is the slide master. I think generally when you open up the slide master is always just tucked at the top. So you just need to scroll up. So this is my slide master. So slides have this as the default slide. So what that means is I just choose my blue background here. So I can right click on my background. I can click on Format Background, and I could, if I wanted, select a different color for my background, maybe a gray. Oh God, maybe a slightly darker gray. Okay, that's a bit better for me now. Okay, so you can see all the other slides have now changed to that gray. So I don't need to manually do it. I can click apply to all here and change that font style really easily. That's okay. And then I could even change things like by default, I've chosen this font style. So if I want to change the font style, I'm in my headings box. I click on font. I could choose Calibri, and now all the font styles have changed to Calibri. So that's perfectly good font style to read. Nothing shameful about that one at all. So so once you get into this, then suddenly possibilities start to rise. So if, for example, I wanted to, let's say I want to add a new kind of slide type. What I might do is, I think I might go to insert a new insert layout. So it's going to have a heading. That's what I want. But if you want to add font that is going to be read by a screen effectively, because remember, we want to avoid that insert text box feature. So if in this new slide, I've got insert placeholder and content, so click on content, draw my content box. This means now I've inserted a text box that I know a screen reader can read effectively. Okay, so let's say, like what you can do is name each of these slides that you've made in your template with a unique name. So I just right click over my slide that I just created. And so I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it the Lorraine template.
Thanks, Sharon.
You can't say you never had something called after you.
There you go.
Okay.
That's it.
So, so that's it. I've created a Lorraine template, which I know has a heading. And actually, to even insert the heading is a bit unusual because you have to tick a box. So it's kind of different again from creating this box. So I can remove the heading for whatever reason by clicking that, or inserting it just by clicking this. I think it's not very intuitive, is it? Like you wouldn't
No.
think a heading box, like, again, I kind of question some of the ways these are kind of laid out. But once you're aware of them, then at least you know what to expect. So I think some of the features when you start making accessible PowerPoints are things you just have to learn off. And that's okay, because you've got, this video to return to. So can I undo a lot of these kind of things and just return back to my lovely blue background? Yay. Okay, so I'm just going to click close master view. So I can just close it and it just resumes as a regular PowerPoint then. Okay.
Yeah.
So at least now, if you're starting from scratch with PowerPoint, you can now, from the very beginning, go to the master slide and start creating those backgrounds and those images here and get it set up exactly as you want from the get-go, especially in a way where you know your font is going to be screen reader friendly. So again, please avoid things like the insert text box. That is not accessible and it doesn't appear for a text reader. So that's the main thing to avoid. Also, if you insert a shape and then you start writing, this is text, just to explain, also that is not accessible either. So a screen reader can't read that text either. I know.
Gosh.
It's like, why can't PowerPoint just make it accessible? Why not? Okay. So again, just the things you kind of pick up along the way. It's very strange. So in terms of other resources, I just thought, if you are creating your own PowerPoint templates from the start, this website called Flat Icon has loads of different downloadable icon images. So like Twitter and Facebook and arrows and things to address with just little kind of bold images. That is free, and there's lots of different icons there to download, even for open source photographs. Unsplash is a web page that has loads of open source images again. So, just keeping in mind about Creative Commons and using licensed or license-free photos, I think is useful. The third option is Slide Carnival. That's a really interesting website that has a selection, as I would have mentioned, of Google Slides and and PowerPoint slides as well. They're not accessible, but they give you ideas about layouts, but you can make them accessible manually. And then Microsoft has a web page which has a PowerPoint that you download from this web page, and the PowerPoint has links then to, I think it's 8 or 12 accessible PowerPoint templates. So they range in different styles. But if you just want to start off from the get-go with an accessible PowerPoint, the right place to go is this link here. And you can just download whatever those 8 to 12 accessible PowerPoint templates are, and just start building your presentations away there. So that was, I actually never realized this web page existed until I started looking around last week. Like, it's one that is kind of useful to know. And then converting your PowerPoints then into an audio file is really easy. So once you know all the text that you've added into a PowerPoint and you use proper headings, what you can do is, there's a link to a website here, and that could be useful to try afterwards. And then if you have built your PowerPoint accessible, you can then drag this PowerPoint into this website, and I think it's by Blackboard. They've made it, and they've made it available because of the COVID crisis. That will convert your PowerPoint into an audio file, so then you or a student or an employee or whoever can then listen back to the PowerPoint, the text in it, which is kind of useful. So in terms of what we've done here, actually I might just stop sharing for a second. Hi, was there something you want to say there?
And there's a few questions as well that
Yeah.
when you've done that, actually, there's a few things. So somebody said they're working in the prison system and they're putting together PowerPoint presentations that will be streamed on their TV channel.
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to have video links that will play automatically, and whichever animations, etc., need to play automatically. Is this webinar only for sharing presentation on a PC, or is it possible to make a slideshow that can run automatically on video, voiceover, and animation? So we've kind of touched on a few of them things.
So if the person, because the poll that I'm going to show now is going to give 3 different options, and I think one of those options might be useful, which is converting your PowerPoint into a video, because then you can add your own voice to each slide of the video, and it's really easy to do. It's a really fantastic feature in PowerPoint, and I've used it myself. So that might be an option of how you could convert your PowerPoint into a video, and then you could play it back or loop it, or I suppose I'm not sure in the exact context, but I mean, if that person,
I think it is that you might have something that starts out as a PowerPoint and then it's streamed.
yeah,
No.
because even so, what I suppose how you would stream it, I'd be curious about how it's streamed, because if you can create videos and just stream those videos, I mean, that would take a lot of pressure off you having to present everything live. That would be great. But if it's something you're going to present live,
I think it's just by video links.
Okay.
It starts out as we said, a PowerPoint presentation, and then they want to make it into something that they can use as a video.
Okay, that's fair enough. Is there another question there?
And then, how do I insert a video? That's very easy. You just go to it's very easy.
Yeah, it's very easy. And actually, if you look at practice regarding accessibility, one website, and again, I think it was the Ally, and so I'll get the webpage for that. Ally make the point of just having the link to the video. So they were making a point that there might be an issue regarding the closed captions within a YouTube video if you embed the video into the PowerPoint. Something I hadn't thought about before. And when I started looking at it, you know, it might, if you're in a situation where you can at least in the PowerPoint just have the link to the YouTube video or the video, that might be better, because, you know, if the closed captions are available, you know, it's easier to switch them on directly within YouTube. I
And then
know.
you have to have the two things in the same file when you try. Yeah, and that gets too large and stuff
I
sometimes.
know. So, and again, I never
Yeah,
thought of just keeping it simple and just like have a link to YouTube. I would always kind of think like, wouldn't it look better just to have the video embedded in
doesn't
PowerPoint?
always work.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't, and then you may lose the closed captions. So that's the challenge. Actually, just to even say that that web page to Ally, I've just inserted the link in there. So it's a11yproject.com. So apologies for that. Uh,
Excellent. Yeah,
okay. Um,
excellent. Any more? Just run down. Hopefully, we've answered all of the questions. Please. Oh yeah. So if someone's using slide notes at the, you know, you put them at the bottom, will the screen reader pick those up?
uh, Sorry, can you say that question again?
You know that we know when you do a PowerPoint, you put notes in it at the bottom. Sometimes presenters do that. You put notes to remind yourself when you're doing it, oh, things I have to cover that are not necessarily in the main slide.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Can that be picked up by the screen reader?
That's a good question. I actually have no
I have
idea.
loads of questions for somebody I know that uses a screen reader.
Yeah, that's actually,
I
I'm kind
must
of thinking
check
now I
that.
kind of want to, I don't know, but that's, that I don't know. I'd imagine it could be. You'd imagine that would be like if that person made notes for themselves and they use a screen reader, wouldn't they want
Well, they would,
to?
yeah, well, would they even, yeah. Usually, these notes are usually for the presenter. So,
Oh, okay. Okay. And actually,
what screen color would you recommend from the Chrome store? Um,
well,
screen color, yeah,
my tip is to try them out. So if you know that you have, or you might have an aware, like for me, why I got topic sensitivity is because like I suspected there was an issue because um, because I would struggle reading for more than 10 minutes at a time. And I wasn't sure. So when I spoke to my someone, Geraldine, she just suspected it might be a scotopic sensitivity issue. So we tried a few different colors. So I suppose in general, blue and beige would be the usual colors, but I would actually suggest try them for a few days and see which color just works more effectively with you. But blue and beige are kind
yeah,
of,
and just as we said earlier on about the actual PowerPoint, to avoid those kind of garish colors and
oh yeah,
proper, proper
it's
contrasts.
true. Actually, can
Um,
I come to the questions a bit later? Can I do the poll now?
yeah, yeah, go on, yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just going to ask people just participate in the poll. So I'm launching the poll, and so these are the choices we're kind of asking people to make. So three choices, maybe to follow up. So turning PowerPoint into a video, that is something we were talking about. So accessible charts and tables in PowerPoint and Word. It sounds a bit boring, but if you're someone who has a lot of those kind of issues, that could be interesting. And also Google Suite. I know I think Office 365 is kind of maybe kind of dominating now. So if there was a small crowd who were interested in Google Suite kind of tools. Okay, so I think, Jesus, already I can see turning PowerPoint into a video is the main thing. And actually,
Lots of videos made out there.
yeah, well, actually, and I think that's kind of useful too, because if you already have existing PowerPoint videos, um, there's something really useful about being able to just convert that already existing PowerPoint into a video, because then you could make that available. Say, for example, if you're an educator, making a video available to your students in semester one about a particular topic could be useful. So rather than if, like, for all we know, maybe there's educators out there who are nervous about presenting live. And that may be a real issue. I've never actually thought of it now until now it popped into my head. So maybe for some educators, they might prefer
Mhm.
to pre-record their lectures. And then during the lectures, they could facilitate other things. So like, quizzes, like Socrative, those multiple choice kind of questions that you can use. I think Kahoot as well. So there might be a different way the educator could interact with the students as they're viewing the video. So turning PowerPoint into video, but also making Powtoon or video describe videos accessible. Okay. Oh, video describe videos. Okay.
I suppose really the second one, the accessible charts and tables. Not everybody uses charts and tables, but people
Yeah.
do, and I mean,
Yeah.
if people want it as well,
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
I think it's good.
Yeah,
Well, turning PowerPoint. So our next webinar, will it be turning PowerPoint into a video?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I think the public so I'm going to end polling. I'm going to share the results. So you should be able to see the results of those now. So what we are going to do in a few weeks' time, myself and Lorraine, we're going to, every weekend, spend 1,000,000 hours working on making making a presentation slash webinar about converting your PowerPoint into a video. And actually, I think that might be useful in a couple of different ways. I mean, I suppose I would like to kind of add or augment that about kind of bringing up that point you made about the transcript and how you make that available. So I'll look at a few different options regarding that. So whether we upload the video to YouTube, so I might pre-make a video, upload it to YouTube, and see how long that takes and how I download the transcript and share my
Yeah.
findings with you.
Sure. Yeah.
It would be nice if we could have closed captions live as we're presenting, but like I'm gonna try it out, and we're gonna see, and we're gonna come back with solutions for you anyway. Okay, I think someone mentioned something about Google Suite. Hillary Murta would like to see other options also, tables, charts, and Google Suite, but could only pick one in the poll. Yeah, I know. I was a bit strict in the poll, Hillary. I'm sorry, I know.
Okay.
But
And then somebody's mentioned a thing called Screencast-O-Matic.
oh yeah, I've used it myself. Yeah, yeah. So for screen capturing, yeah, it does the job. I've used it. I think, is there a limitation on the free version about how long you can make the video? Why do I have something like 15 minutes or something in my head for that? Also, I think there's something as well, 15 minutes, I think, okay, Laura, thanks. There's something else that someone advised me to try called Loom, Loom. I've
Right,
only,
okay.
yeah, so there's loads of different options about free-ish screen grabbing software. Now, I think it was someone from an ETB only last week who told me about Loom. So there's a few different things.
Nice.
I think it's value in exploring charts and tables. I know, do you know, I think so, especially for the academic year committees, whoever that Irk Gunts, yeah. Do you know, we might, I think we're going to have to cover charts and text boxes and all these kind of ways of displaying information, because there is a little bit of a learning curve in that. Okay, which I think is useful. Oh, someone sent a link to record presentations. God, actually, that was a nice link. Thanks, Julian Bergen. Thank you very much. That was really good. Someone sent Loom. Thank you very much. So is Gel. So there's loads of solutions out there about how to make videos from your PowerPoints. And again, I think all these kind of things are going to, help, especially the educator beforehand, but also be useful to the students, because say those videos that you make, if you do upload them to PowerPoint, that's going to generate closed captions as well.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
or the educator could upload the videos and keep them private, but allow YouTube to generate the transcript, and then the educator could download the transcript and then have the video available in the VLE or LMS or whatever they're using, and then supply the transcript that YouTube created for them. So there could be a few different ways, because I know sometimes lecturers and educators are worried about, the work that they're doing, and they want to, like academic kind of, conventions there. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
that's
see, the
okay.
thing is, well, yeah, sometimes people get het up on intellectual
Yeah.
property and stuff. Yeah.
And that's okay. And I get why that's the point. So we might kind of just give people strategies about how to keep that intact, because I mean, especially when you've created a PowerPoint. That's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Okay. Well, do you know what? I think we might. Are we done? Are we
Are we
finished?
done?
Oh, actually, I think we'll just finish off with that
Let me see there.
slideshow with.
Someone's asking what are transitions? You know, some of these things like what are transitions are just when you have PowerPoint and the text comes in when you press the keyboard, it slides in and out. Just in terms of if you don't want all the information on screen straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good point. So I think can everyone see this slide? So we're just going to
And
end.
yeah,
Okay, I think everyone should be able to see that. So again, I suppose we're just going to say goodbye. Thank you very much for
fine. Thank
attending.
you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, Lorraine, this is our second webinar. I mean, we're going to have our own podcast soon. I can
that's
just
it.
feel it coming. Yeah. Yeah, we just have to come up with some kind of clever name or something like that. Some
Yeah,
merge of
exactly.
Trevor and Lorraine.
Yeah,
Trelane. Um,
Trelane.
Trelane. So feel free to email us. So if there's things that we touched off of, or maybe we just didn't have time to answer your question, or we didn't answer your question correctly, feel free to email us. My email is there. Lorraine's email is also up. Also, we're on Twitter.